For this technique, we're going to play with wet on wet, and we're going to play with how your paint interacts with water and how much water to pick up and how much paint to pick up and what happens when you have paint already down and the second layer comes on and things like that. We're just going to be playful. I'm going to illustrate flowers, but you can do this with any subject you like. You can just watch this lesson and see what I do and then just play around with it with whatever you want to do, or you can follow along with me exactly. It's up to you. To start, pick out the colors you want to use. I picked 5 colors, but you can do less or more, and be sure to have white on hand or black. If you're mixing all your colors, be sure to do it now. So I'm just going to put my colors in the palette. You don't need a lot of paint. A little bit will go a long way. You can always add more. But if you are pre-mixing, be sure to mix enough paint, because if you run out of paint, it's very tricky to mix the same color and almost impossible. With this technique, we're going to have fun mixing on the page. So just pick a color, any color you like. Here I chose pink. Be sure to add enough water. You can use even more water because we're doing wet and wet. And make a shape of a flower. I'm going to do something like this. And notice how this is very watercolory so far. I'm going to pick up another color. I'm going to drop more of that in there. Now, depending on how much water you have on your brush and how much pigment, the paint will spread more or less, especially in gouache where we can get very opaque washes. I'm going to do another one. I'm going to keep doing these simple shapes. You can copy me exactly or make up your own. And I'm just throwing in different colors. Now this color is lighter than this one, but because it's gouache, we can add it in. Now this time I picked up more paint, so it's spreading less than this one did. And we're just playing with our paint to water ratio and experimenting with how it reacts with water on the page. This is really just for practice and for you to get better at understanding how much paint to pick up, how much water to pick up, what will happen, how wet your page is. You just need experience with this to fully comprehend it, because you can read about it, you can watch me do it, but you have to try it for yourself. So here I have more paint and less water, and it also is spreading even less than this one, even though the page is pretty wet. Now if we make a drier flower, we're using more pigment here. So if we make a wet on wet technique, it will spread even less, unless we add more water. See, that barely spread, but it still did and still makes a beautiful texture. And we're going to keep going like this. I'm just going to make a couple of flower shapes until I'm happy with it. And I'm just playing with how much paint's on my brush, how much water is on my brush, and how it interacts with the next layer and the next layer. This is just a fun and playful exercise. If you wanted to learn how to paint loose florals, I have classes on that go more in depth into doing this more realistically, based on references, but this is just for fun. So just make simple shapes. Here I'm tapping the page and I'm really just letting that paint get on there and see how beautifully that spreads. And again, I'm adding little dots. I like doing that. I really like this technique with these flowers. And also you can add little dots on the outside of them to make it even more fun and playful. Very simple. Now I can keep going and keep adding more and more flowers until I'm happy with it. And I recommend you try to fill up the page as much as you can, because it's more and more practice. You're just getting used to picking up enough paint and enough water and seeing how it reacts if you get a little bit more or a little bit less. There are no mistakes here, just practice. So don't be afraid of making mistakes and just experiment as much as you can. Now while the paint is still wet, I want to start adding in some stems so that it can blend into it. If I wanted them not to blend, I would wait for it to fully dry and then I would add them on. And I would make a little thicker paint where they touch so it doesn't reactivate the paint underneath. This is just something that you learn with practice. I do want to make it a little lighter, so I just add a little bit of white and enough water. As you can see, this is still wet, so I'm picking up some of that pink and it's going to float into it just a little bit. Same thing here. Now we're being very loose. There is no pressure here, just for fun. We are just having fun. Now another fun thing you can do is pick up a color or just change your color a little bit and go back in there and make it very gradual blending. If I just make a little gradient by just picking up a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. Now you see how this gradually blends from dark blue to the light turquoise. This was more like a dry technique, but like you saw in the previous spears exercise, there's a lot of ways to blend, and I want you to play with those and see what you like the most. So here I want a darker stem. Now this is dry, so I did paint over it and it didn't blend in. But here, see how it did? Because it was still wet, the paint went to the water. And I really like that effect here. But here, it's also fun. It's up to you. Just learn how to use your paints. Practice. Let's say I want to add some leaves here that are darker. I can easily do that. The fun thing about loose florals like this is you can be as loose as you want with your strokes and it will still look pretty cool. Now, let's say I want to make it more interesting. So I can do that dry brush technique again, or I can wet my brush and pick up more of the color that I want and just go back in and very gently and carefully just add a little bit of a line. Now this is almost fully dry, so it's kind of just sitting on top, but it also reactivates a little, so it gives it a cool effect. My point is, play around, see what works for you, see what you like, see what you don't like. Right here it's silhouette, so I'm going to add that in. It's going to blend more. I like that. It's all about practice and just seeing what works best for you. Let's say I want to add some full leaves here and I want to have fun blending them. So let's say I do the first layer, just the full color like this. So now I have one color pretty much, and now I can go back in and maybe blend it out a little bit and make it a little bit more interesting. So maybe just up here I'll just add a little bit of wet paint into the wet paint and it will just blend, and I'll just naturally smooth it out with my brush. And now it has a cool texture to it and a little bit of variation in the color. And if you overdo it like I did here, I can just pick up my previous color and just add that back in. And it will blend and blend and blend. Love this blending. Another fun way of doing this is to just start painting it with one color and then pick up another one and continue painting it. And then pick up another one and continue painting it. And it will naturally blend. Similar to what we did here, but this was a little bit more wet. And just as beautiful. You don't have to do exactly what I do with every stroke. The whole point is just to practice. In fact, you'll get better if you do your own thing, but you can copy me exactly. That's up to you. Copying is a great learning tool. Don't ever be embarrassed of doing that. Just don't ever claim anything you make when you copy as your own. As you can see, I'm pretty fun when I mix my paints on here, and I don't mind mixing on the page. It's whatever you want to do, whatever makes the most fun for you. And I'm just kind of eyeballing my piece and seeing where I can use more color and just adding that in. Nothing fancy, just playing. But like I said before, it's not about the composition with this, it's just about practicing putting color down and blending it and putting more or less down. So just have fun and practice. And I just continue doing this until I'm happy with it. You can use more or less water or more or less paint. Just vary what you do. Like here, I used diluted paint with a lot of water, and this made a transparent color, but I didn't have to use a lot of white. I just used the white of the page to show through. So to make it even more fun, I can go back in now and I can add a second layer to the flowers. Let's mix a new color, maybe something lighter. And now I have to use more paint because a second layer, you don't want to reactivate the layer below, but like I said before, we're practicing everything here, so you can do it on purpose as well. Now maybe I just want to add little details. And oops, it was still wet right here. I didn't check, and because of that, it started blending, and that's okay. I like that. Let's play with it. Let's be playful. If I don't like something that I do, it's gouache. It's so easy to paint over it. I can just go back in with my previous color, even while it's still wet, and just blend it all out and just make a new color. There's no worries. Everything is fun and chill. I can paint over any layer that I want and make any color that I want. Voila, completely new flower. But let's say I want to layer like I did before. I learned my lesson. I'm going to check. Is it dry? It's dry. And I can go back in now and add more detail. This is completely optional. You don't have to have a second layer, but I think it makes things pop more, and that's really the strength of gouache. You can't do this with watercolor. So I recommend you play with it and see what works for you. Now, I am going to do a second layer on this one because it's not going to match the other ones if I don't, unless I keep some of them like this. The point is just to play though, just play with it, have fun. So right now I'm just adding little accents and little details, but I could also reactivate the paint below on purpose and blend it out into something new. For example, let's pick up some pink and let's put it right here. And then I can clean my brush and dry it. And I could just very gently nudge the old paint to blend with this new paint. And that's going to leave a beautiful gradient as well. And it's going to make some fun textures. So this is just something for you to play with. You can do all kinds of things. I can go in and start adding outlines to my flower and just have fun with it. There are no rules, only the rules that you create. And I want you guys to be playful with your paints, and I want you to be open to experimentation and try new things, because we all have a fun way of working with it, and we all have a favorite way. I'm keeping my hand loose on purpose and making really loose strokes, which is fun, but you can be as careful as you want. That's up to you. Because this paint isn't fully opaque, I didn't pick up a lot of it, you can still see the color below, but they don't blend because I painted very carefully and quickly. I didn't remove the paint below it too much, so that's why it overlaps like this and makes beautiful transparent layers. Like I said before, this isn't to show off, this is just to practice. So just have fun with it and layer as much as you want and add as many little details as you want, and just play with how much paint is on your brush and what happens and how it interacts with the paint below it and how much water you have on your brush. This is all very important to know, so just play with it. Also, by freestyling composition like this, you're learning a lot about layouts and what looks good and what doesn't. That's why I highly recommend you learn the basics of graphic design, because you subconsciously will know what looks good and what doesn't. It'll become easier. But even if you fail, that's how you learn. So don't worry so much about mistakes and all that. Just have fun. We're just practicing painting. And you don't have to do florals for this exercise either. You can do anything you want. You can do little mushrooms or little people or a city, whatever you want to do, whatever your style is. There are no wrong answers in art, and we are all completely unique in our expression. So I'm just playing with it and adding as much detail as I want to add, wherever I want to add it, and just having fun. If you don't want to disturb the paint below, be careful to not pick up too much water and just have enough paint, and then you can add details right on top of other paint and it shouldn't be a problem. Also, pay attention to how different colors interact. Some colors tend to stand out more and strike through like I showed earlier, and some work perfectly together in harmony. So just be playful, do your own thing, and have fun until you feel like you're done. So I feel like I'm done, and this is not something I would, put in a gallery or something, but this is just a fun little exercise to do and just to be playful with it. And it's going to teach you a lot. Like, for example, I could go back in now and just, try to fill in this little spot with paint and make it not bleed. So that could be a little challenge that you could do at the end. Just play with it, kind of like a coloring book page, and challenge yourself to do things and see if you can do them, if you learned how much paint to pick up, how much water to pick up, and what happens. That's the goal of this, just to learn. So just practice, 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 and practice, and see what you come up with, and just keep practicing and practicing and have fun with it. No big deal, just fun. Now let's do the next one.